Well, on the night of 18th June 1968, we were conducting what was called a area recon. We were a four-man team. I was an assistant team leader. We got our mission and we went looking for trouble. And then trouble found us instead.
We'd been doing recon, and there was a team of LRPs, long-range reconnaissance patrol, that we'd been supporting down almost to Saigon. They were down on the river, and somehow at dark, all of a sudden Charlie started opening up holes and coming out, and then they called us.
This night, we expected to do nothing but recon. We'd only gone maybe 150 meters, and all of a sudden, the team leader who was walking ahead of me stopped, and I got down next to him. He cupped his hand in my ear and said, "We got enemy all around us." We had approximately at least 2 platoons and maybe a company taking a break, it looked like. We even saw a couple flare-ups, somebody lighting a cigarette. They didn't expect anybody, let alone Americans, to be out there in the middle of that rice paddy. So at that point, we knew it was a tough situation. We'd been in them before, but we had never been totally surrounded. Fortunately, we were at a terminus of about 2 or 3 cart paths, and it was about 6 foot wide road top. So we got in there, and behind it, we're going to make our stand and call for help. We'd called our forward operating base. Well, they were scrambled, and on a scramble, they've got 5 minutes to get in the bird, strapped in, helmet on, and in the air and heading towards the contact site. So that's at the point where we called for help, and that turned out to be Taylor.
We were in a big field about the size of a football stadium, and they were at one end, and the river was right there, the Saigon River. Back behind them, there were several hundred North Vietnamese regulars, and they were surrounded. They said, "Well, tell Mom I love her. I think this is it."
Larry was in D Troop Air, 1st Squadron, 4th Cavalry. He was coming to us in an aircraft that we'd seldom seen. It was a brand new AH-1G Bell Cobra attack helicopter.
That's the most fun you've ever had with your clothes on, no kidding. It's so sleek and so fast and so sensitive. You think it, and it's gone. That was the best ship that the Army had at that time.
This fight was going on 35 minutes. Each of us riflemen, myself included, had started the fight with about 350 rounds of ammunition, which is about double the standard load for an American infantryman in Vietnam. What we carried is what we got, so we went heavy. By that time in the fight, we'd blown off 4 of our claymores for the close-in enemy. We'd shot most of our rounds. We're down to a single magazine per guy, and Taylor and his wingman, they too were getting close to being done.
You and your Cobra would carry 152 rockets and 16,000 rounds of ammunition. And the only problem I ever ran into was that was not enough. You could shoot that up in no time at all.
Taylor and his wingman between them had about 3 or 4 seconds of fire left. So knowing that they were almost out, there's not going to be any relief coming, no extraction ship, no additional gunships. And if they left us, we weren't going to be there, not alive at any rate. He was expecting also to get a relieving force of Cobra gunships. Turns out they weren't on the way. They were committed to other units up north in other fight. We were also supposed to get an extraction ship. They were going to extract us if Larry could carve a big enough hole in the enemy encirclement for them to come in for us. Well, Larry was told they're not going to be here because they had a comms problem, total loss of communications. So there was not going to be anybody there in time to do things as we normally would try to make an emergency extraction. Larry determined that the situation was bad and it was only going to get worse. Taylor called in. He said, "I think I got a plan to get these fellas out of there. I'm going to go in there myself on my ship, land, and I can get them out of there." Well, somebody, I believe it was a colonel, a fairly high rank back in the base camp, says, "No, can't do that.
He says, well, they're trying to escape and evade. And I said, sir, there's no place for them to escape and evade to. Well, you leave them, don't try to pick them up. I said, yes, sir. And first thing I did, I called him. I said, get ready.
He was told again, says, don't do it. Don't attempt to get them out of there. Your ship is a gunship. It has no cabin for them to ride in. Taylor said, well, I'm going to try. And they kept telling him, no, once again, don't do it. He switched channels. He cut them out of the fight. Captain Taylor had our general position. As he came over and we made contact, we hear Wildcat 2, which was our radio call sign. This is Dark Horse 3-2. Dark Horse 3-2 is Captain Taylor. We said, yep, God, you just went over top. So he said, okay, close, but not close enough. I'm going to need you to mark your position.
And I said, well, why don't you just pop off a flare, pop off a star cluster there so I can locate you.
We didn't want to do that, but we certainly wanted to help, and Larry needed to know exactly where we were. He said, when I say go, hit him.
So as soon as they popped it off, I shot the power and landed, and they looked at me like, what do we do now? And I said, you better get on the damn ship.
Got to the helicopter, and he said, okay, jump on. And I looked at him, what do you mean jump on? Where? He said, we got 10 seconds. That's all we got. You find a place to sit. By that time, of course, we knew it was not a standard gunship. There was no internal cabin. And Con and I just looked at the rocket pods, which stuck out in front of the little weapon sponson, little short wing they suspended from. He said, let's ride like a horse.
I said, you better grab a hold of something. You're going to fall off of this damn thing, and I'm not looking for you if you do. So he grabbed hold of something.
I was on the outboard rocket pod. Billy was on the inboard. Billy tapped the side of the fuselage, and Elsner tapped it with his rifle, and Taylor knew we were on board.
We just pulled it straight up to about 3,000 feet. We're out of small arms range. Of course, Charlie shot at us, but he didn't hit us because I had all my lights turned off.
Once he was safely away, he took it back down on the deck and proceeded to white knuckle it at about 50 knots down to Tonsanut Air Force Base. There's a water treatment plant there. So he swung out over the Dong Nai River and we proceeded down about 10 miles.
They were just sitting out there. One aboard in Texas, he had his legs wrapped around a rocket pod. He'd bang on the side of the window and he'd go, yeah.
Once he got there and he knew he was in safe territory, he turned on his landing lights. We were in the middle of a wagon wheel of armored vehicles, so very safe at that point.
I landed, they jumped off, and then all four turned around and saluted and disappeared into the dark.
We couldn't talk with him. The antenna was broken and the radio was no longer operating. The only thing we could think to do is to get off the helicopter, run around the front of it, stand in his landing lights and just pop a quick salute, thumbs up. Good job, thanks. And he took off, and that's the last time I saw him for 30 years.
When I got back, the commanding officer said, what possessed you to do that? And I said, well, it needed doing, sir. And he said, well, you can't beat that for an answer. And I said, no, sir. He says, how many did you lose? And I said, none. He said, well, I told you not to go get them. And I said, you want me to take them back? And he says, well, no. And he shut up, and I didn't hear anything else about him.
Captain Larry Taylor, he pulled other missions. I had 3 more missions before I went home. I went home about a month later. The war went on, and everybody continued to do what they had done before that night. It was just a mission, just a very different and exciting end to it, but a favorable end.
Somewhere, at some place, there are people who are depending on you. to make the right decision. You're committed to the troops that you're supporting, and you're committed to the troops that are supporting you.
Helicopter pilots will always be my heroes, and Larry, of course, a superhero. Everything he did that night, though he was told not to, was what you'd expect from Larry Taylor, particularly after I got to know him later on. He operated under his own motto, leave no man behind. And he lived up to that. Thank goodness he did. So his attitude was, this is going to happen or I'm going to die trying.
The President of the United States of America has awarded, in the name of Congress, the Medal of Honor to First Lieutenant Larry L. Taylor, United States Army.
You know, the scriptures tell us that no greater love hath a man than to lay down his life for his friends. Larry Taylor didn't lay down his life that night, but he was damn sure willing to do so.